Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Beauty for Ashes broadcast. I am Angela Jackson. I am your licensed cosmetologist, hair loss, and cranioprosthesis specialist, who's also happened to be a makeup artist and a life insurance agent as well. Here to bring you another episode on today. So, today we're going to talk about understanding hair loss, right? So last week we had an opportunity to discuss how stress can be a factor of hair loss. And we had licensed nurse practitioner Naya Brown on as a guest, where she explained from the medical perspective what goes on in the body that can trigger hair loss and why it happens, among other things. So today we're going to dive in a little bit deeper. I'm going to give you a training on how to find some hair loss identifiers. Sometimes we are going through things where we're starting to notice something different in our hair, but we don't know how to identify it. So on today, we're going to do a presentation to help you understand not only the causes of hair loss, but how to identify the type of hair loss that you may be encountering. So let's get started. Let me pull up my slides so that we can do this presentation here. Okay, so we're going to talk about understanding the causes of hair loss. This is a holistic solution. So I am a certified cosmetologist and hair loss practitioner. And what that means is not only do I get to care for and style my clients' hair, but I also have the opportunity to discover what could potentially be causing them some hair loss issues and concern. And hair loss may not necessarily be from anything medical. It could be just that we're not balancing our skin right. So sometimes it could be a topical thing. It could be due to fungus on the scalp. It could also be due to a clogged follicle that could eventually, over time, cause some hair loss. So there are several things that could be a factor, and we're going to get into it today to start to find out what could potentially be your cause of hair loss. So, who am I? Again, I'm Angela Jackson. I am a certified cosmetologist, hair loss certified cosmetologist and hair loss specialist. And I have well over 30 years of experience in the beauty industry. I decided to delve into trichology when, after COVID, my family they started to lose a substantial amount of their hair 3 months into their recovery of contracting the COVID virus. So, right at the 3-month mark is when they started to have visible signs of losing their hair. And when I say it came out in the masses, it is not an understatement. They lost nearly 70% of their hair. And this is what I was talking about on last week, how stress can cause this type of hair loss. So, this is a trigger type of stress due to medical. So, the effects of COVID had a great impact on what was going on inside their body. Thus, after you've been exposed internally with a stress related event, typically you'll start to see some signs of that. 3 months is usually about 90 days after the onset of the incident that you'll start to notice some type of hair loss sometimes. All right. And so the objective of this webinar is just that I want you to understand what hair is and its purposes, to get an awareness of the statistical amount of hair loss sufferers. There's a lot of people who suffer silently from hair loss, be it medical or just not knowing. So you can have hair loss from improper styling. You can have hair loss from misuse of products. There are several reasons why why hair loss can take place in a person. And so we're going to discuss some of that today. We're also going to learn about some of the causes of hair loss and its types, as well as become aware of the various treatments that are available today to help restore your hair. Okay, so this is a model of what the hair looks like at the cellular level, right? So you have the dermis and the epidermis. You have this is the the shaft of the hair. So this is what's growing out from the scalp. You're able to see the sebaceous glands and just how what is all involved underneath the surface of the skin to keep our hair alive. Our hair is nourished by blood and oxygen. And when any of that is not enough to feed and nourish the follicle, then hair loss is usually what happens. And remember last week I talked about hair being non essential. So, because hair is non essential, meaning that we don't need hair to sustain our life. So what happens is that if we are missing something in our body, if something is lacking in our body that our organs need, it's going to pull the blood from the follicle area, from that follicle where it's nourishing the follicle to produce hair. It's going to pull from that. And that is another factor that could also create some hair loss because our bodies are fighting to keep us alive. And so it will pull the nutrients from the scalp, from the hair, from that follicle, in order to make sure that our organs are properly nourished. Okay, so there are four stages of hair growth, right? You have the anagen, which is the growing stage. That is the stage that our hair is in most of the time. That is why, you can see you see people with a head of hair. Usually it's in the anagen stage. Most of the hairs are in that stage at the same time. Now, keeping in mind that every hair has its own follicle. There's sometimes two, maybe three hairs per follicle, but each hair strand grows at its own rate. So it is growing at a stage in and of itself. So, you may have um uh some hairs in the anagen stage at the same time as you may have hairs in some of the three other cycles. So the second cycle would be the catagen, which is the transition stage, and it lasts about 10 days. And this is where the hair begins to shrink and it's starting to prepare to separate from the follicle to make room for the new hair that is going to be growing. Then you have the telogen or the resting stage, and this is about 10 to 15% of our hair is usually in the telogen stage at a time. And this is where the old hairs start to move up the hair shaft until it falls out, which is the exogen stage. And at that time, that is where the new cycle of the anagen stage begins. So this is the growth stage, and this is why sometimes I tell my clients when they are experiencing hair loss, when they're going through the regrowth stage, where they're coming in for services, I let them know, listen, it's going to take time. You're going to have to be patient because the hair has to go through the cycles. So typically, when you're dealing with a client who has experienced hair loss, they're in the exogen stage. They don't have any hair, so there's nothing there, right? So we have to allow opportunity to stimulate the area to get the blood to flow into the follicle so that it can then start to go back through the anagen stage and growing again. And just like a garden, if you will, when you're planting seeds for a flower garden, you're not going to see results overnight. But over time, when you're continuing to nourish, when you continue to care for and treat that garden, over time, you'll start to see something sprouting until it becomes a full grown flower garden. Same is true with our hair. So it has to go through the processes and we have to allow time for it to do so. Statistically in 2023, okay, I don't have my numbers there, but about 150, it was actually 150,000 people during that time lost their hair. They had some type of hair loss or some type of shedding of some type. Hair loss can cause a lot of emotional disturbances. It can cause you to be embarrassed, you can be shameful, it can create worry, it can create fear. It can really play on your esteem. Me professionally, I've encountered hair loss at least 4 times, and I remember that each time it was very traumatic. I remember the first time I lost my hair, I was in what, seventh grade. During that time, short hair was not a thing. No, I'm sorry, back it up. I was sixth grade and I was coming out of it in the seventh grade. So sixth grade. Now, back in the 80s, that was not, a thing for, 12-year-olds to, was I even 12, sixth grade? Yeah. Yeah, it's about 12. To go through that type of traumatic experience, that was traumatizing for me. Um, and that happened because of improper hairstyling, a professional, in fact, doing something that they should not have done that triggered hair loss. And for a child, that's traumatic. And not only for children, for anybody, especially when your image plays a huge role in what you do for a living. A lot of times we have to show up in front of people, and our image matters. How we show up matters because people formulate thoughts about who we are, or whatever it is. People usually formulate thoughts based on the visual, what they can see, and so it does affect us internally and psychologically. We go through a lot of things when hair loss is a factor. And so, as a trichologist, I have an opportunity to give my clients a spark of hope that will help to encourage them and then help to service them in a way to help to stimulate the follicles to regenerate cells, for cellular renewal in the scalp, and to be able to help them to stimulate the scalp and get and create an environment for hair growth. And for those clients who are not able to grow hair, we have options available for them as well. And even the clients that, I've had some clients who have encountered some alopecia, whether it be alopecia totalis or alopecia universalis. And we'll go later deeper into what each of those mean. But there are also people who are comfortable with being bald. And so we have treatments in place because it's still skin, and you still have to make sure that your skin is well, that it's healthy, that it's pliable. And so there are products and services for those clients as well. So there's something available for everybody. So let's look at hair loss versus breakage because a lot of people get this a little bit confused. So hair loss happens um, at the surface level, right? So I'm sorry, hair loss happens below. So it is extracted from the root. It is also oftentimes where the bulb detaches from the root. So hair loss begins under the surface of the scalp, whereas breakage often occurs above the scalp. So typically, it's at the hair shaft level, the part that you can see that's growing out of the scalp. That is where usually breakage takes place. So just to give you a little bit of differentiation between the two. Some common types of hair loss are genetics. So, some of the genetic type of hair loss could be the androgenic alopecia. This is your female and male pattern hair loss. And a lot of times people are genetically predispositioned for this type of hair loss, meaning that someone in their family have the trait of having that female and male pattern baldness. And a lot of times, genetically it passes through the family. So this is that type of hair loss. The next type of hair loss is your telogen effluvium. And this type of hair loss is your stress type of hair loss, right? This is the type of hair loss that happens because of stress in the body that is causing this type of hair loss. And then you have your alopecia areata. This is an autoimmune disease where your body is fighting against itself. And usually, with this type of hair loss, you'll see circular patches and so forth. And let me just read through this because as we continue on with the slides, you'll be able to have a visual to see what exactly I'm talking about. And so then you have your cicatricial alopecia, you have your traction alopecia, which a lot of people have experienced or have seen someone with this type of alopecia. And then you have your alopecia totalis and universalis. So alopecia areata, this is the very I'm sorry, androgenic alopecia. So this is the type of alopecia that I was telling you about, the male pattern and the female pattern hair loss. And this happens because there is high dihydrotestosterone, I'm sorry, in the body. And so just to really give you a visual of what that looks like. So remember that I told you that the hair is nourished by blood and oxygen. So think about, okay, this being the follicle and this being the root, right? And so think about how you might have something coming in between the two. So if something's in between the two, blocking the blood, constricting the blood or restricting the blood from feeding the follicle and providing it blood and oxygen, that is what causes the DHT toxicity. And so you're not able to get the nourishment to the follicle because there are androgen receptors that's blocking that pathway, preventing the blood from reaching the follicle. And that is what causes this type of male pattern and female pattern hair loss. And it begins in phases. So there's several phases to this, but you'll start to see the miniaturization of the hairs at the top area, the crown of the hair. And sometimes it can happen at the frontal region as well. Then you have your telogen effluvium, and this is the premature hair loss. So this is where stress plays a factor in the body. So it could be because of some illnesses that attacked your body, that created a stressful environment internally that caused the hair loss. Again, COVID-19 is one of those things. It could also come from childbirth, or if you have a high fever, that could be a factor. If you've had surgery, certain medications can trigger this type of hair loss in the body. And then you have your alopecia areata. This is very common as well. And this is where you'll have like your circular patches in the head. And it can also be on the body as well. It's not limited to the hair. So you might sometimes see it in the eyebrows. You may see it on the skin. Anywhere that hair grows, you could start to see little circular patches, and it comes up anywhere. So it doesn't have a particular pattern. It's just a very smooth circular um, hair loss area, and it's usually because of an autoimmune deficiency. And so what's happening is the body is attacking itself. It's seeing the hair follicle as a foreign body in the body, and so it goes to attack it, not knowing that it's attacking itself. And this is where we start to see this type of hair loss because of the autoimmune deficiency. And then we have central centrifugal cicatricial alopecia. This is a scarring type of alopecia. So when a client is going through this type of hair loss, typically what they'll see is that their part will start to widen over time. You can see in this client's frontal region how the part area is starting to widen. And if it's not addressed right away, you have to be very aggressive with this type of alopecia because although it is scarring, if you are aggressive with it and you start treatments right away, you could potentially start to see some regrowth in this area and start to heal that area. This type of alopecia, you'll also find that you'll have a lot of burning and itching and irritation at the scalp. Uncontrollable. It's like, oh, what do I do? Because it's almost unbearable sometimes. It can be very painful to the person who is dealing with this. So, a person that's dealing with this type of alopecia definitely wants to see a trichologist, hair loss practitioner, but also wouldn't hurt to see a dermatologist as well, as they can do things to kind of help to manage some of those issues that you're experiencing with this type of hair loss. And then we have the traction alopecia. This is a type of alopecia that's very common because of improper hairstyling. So a lot of pulling of the hair, and this can happen anywhere over the head. Typically, a lot of times you'll notice it happening around the frontal region of the hair where the hairs are most fragile because they are very finer around that area. Anywhere around the perimeter of the head where the hair is finer, is very delicate. If you are having improper hairstyling, if your stylist is pulling and tugging on that hair over time, you'll start to lose some hair in that area. And if it persists, it can become permanent because you will have damaged that follicle where it's beyond repair. So when you have this type of hair loss, you want to make sure that you are making your stylist aware of it. You also want to begin to nourish and feed and hydrate the area so that it can heal. And then most importantly, change up your hairstyle. So the hairstyles that you were used to wearing, and be it may be braids or high ponytails, tight ponytails, whatever it is that you were doing, you want to let it rest. You want to allow the follicle to rest and to heal while you're treating it so that you can start to see hair growth again. And then there's universal alopecia totalis and universalis. So totalis is the complete loss of hair on the scalp. That's where on your scalp you're completely bald, but you may still have eyebrows, you may still have hair, body hair. Elsewhere. Universalis is when there is no hair at all anywhere on your body, it is all gone. And typically, this type of hair loss is irreversible. Sometimes the hair may grow back, but oftentimes not so much for this type of client. So, some hair loss solutions that are available are your corticosteroids, which are your topical creams or injections. And those are things that you would get from your dermatologist. Minoxidil and hydrochloroquine is also available. Again, those are also prescribed from your dermatologist. And when prescribed from a dermatologist, when you bring it into your cosmetologist or your hair loss practitioner to service you, they know to use these only on the areas that are being treated. A lot of times, and I was ignorant myself as a cosmetologist in the beginning before taking the hair loss practitioners classes, that what I was doing was they'll give you like the shampoo, and I was putting that shampoo all over my client's hair, and I was noticing the hair was dry, the hair was brittle, was hard to manage. And it wasn't until after taking a course I learned, okay, you're only supposed to apply it to the areas being treated. So if your dermatologist is treating a particular area, particular areas of the scalp, those are the areas that you want to pay attention to when using these products. And then you want to go in later with your other products that are going to hydrate and nourish the hair and scalp. There's also oral antibiotics that your doctor may also recommend. There are topical and oral DHT inhibitors, some medical and some holistic. And so, me being a certified practitioner, what I offer is the holistic version of these things, whereas a doctor or dermatologist will offer the medical side of it. You have your anti inflammatory products, both medical and holistic, available. They're stimulating sprays, low level light therapy, that is your red and your blue lights that help to calm the scalp. It also helps to remove any type of inflammation, bacteria that is on the scalp. You have your gut rebalance. So, gut plays a huge factor in a lot of these hair loss issues and concerns. So, being mindful of what you're putting in your body is definitely key. Understanding whether or not you are receiving enough supplements. A lot of times, a loss of supplements in the body, supplement depletion can cause hair loss. I experienced hair loss because I was vitamin D deficient. Had no idea that vitamin D played a huge factor in whether or not my hair, I had a healthy head of hair on my head. And so when I became vitamin D deficient, that was one of the problems. And so getting blood work done or having some type of DNA testing done will help you to be able to identify whether or not you are balanced with vitamins and minerals. All right, you have your platelet rich plasma injections, and this is done in office by a doctor. There's also ozone therapy. You have high frequency therapy, essential oils, and scalp detoxification. You know, a lot of people don't understand that a built up scalp clogs follicles and can thus in turn create hair loss. And so a lot of times people think that they don't have need for a trichologist when in fact you probably do, because products, just like, you know, when we put, let's say we're showering every day, right? We're putting lotions and oils and emollients on our body. What happens if we never exfoliate our skin? What happens if we never slough off that dead skin? Because just like our skin sheds, our arms, our legs, our face, you know, we have to exfoliate from time to time. Our scalp is the same skin. And I don't think that people really get your scalp is skin. And so, just like you need a facial sometimes to remove the dead skin and to open up the follicles and to hydrate the follicles and the skin and to rejuvenate, the same is true with your scalp. So sometimes a scalp detox is necessary to help to remove all the product and debris from below the surface of the scalp. Topically, we do a lot of shampooing and conditioning, and that's great, but it's not necessarily removing a lot of the toxins and the debris that is in the follicle. See, the follicle is like a dip. It's like a well, if you will. And when stuff piles up, and it's sitting there, it's clogging up the follicle and it's preventing the hair to get oxygen. You know, it's preventing the hair from growing because you have all that goo stuck down there in the follicle. So removing that helps as well. And then proper hair dressing and use of products. And so what I want to do in another podcast is talk about ingredients so that you are aware as a consumer about the products that you're purchasing, because a lot of times we don't really understand what's in the product. They market, you know, to the problem, a lot of times, these companies and so forth. But what they're not doing is educating the consumers about what's involved, what is included in the product. Because what we're finding a lot of times is that clients are having adverse reactions to some of these products because of the chemicals that are in it. So so sometimes they will say, you know, all natural, you know, but a lot of times all natural is not always all natural. So being mindful of that is very important. And so there are medical cranioprosthesis units available for those clients who are experiencing hair loss, like the pictures that I showed you, where the client was experiencing alopecia totalis, there are medical cranial prosthesis units available. And these wigs are totally different from the wigs that are in your beauty supply store because of the cap. So, number one, the wigs are custom made and custom sizable for the client. So, they fit the client like a glove, they fit them perfectly because they are measured for their head shape, for their size, that they're accurately measured for them. And then the type of unit or cap, the material that it's made with, is what also makes it breathable for that client so that their scalp isn't irritated by some of the harsh materials that you'll find in the wigs that are in a beauty supply store. So you'll have your full lace. Sometimes you'll have your polyurethane and your injected type of units where hair is literally injected strand by strand into the unit for the client. And then these units also can be custom tailored to the client. So not only are they sized, but you can also opt for the option to have it cut and colored to your preference so that it looks just like your hair would look before it started to come out. And so there's so many options available now, and I'm very grateful for that because I was just disturbed at some of the wig options that were available in the beauty supply store for people who were encountering hair loss. They didn't really have a lot of options that made them feel good. They only were able to get what they could get. And so now that there are so many options available for them, it does my heart proud because, I enjoy seeing smiles on my clients' faces and being able to make them feel good from the inside out when they look in the mirror and they see themselves. So I'm excited about these options that are available today for them. Okay, and for those of you who do not know, I am now introducing that I offer hair loss restoration services in South Carolina. I have a salon suite available that is in the Rock Hill, South Carolina area. I also offer services now in the Maryland area, primarily Waldorf, but anywhere in the DMV area. I am able to service you. We offer virtual services as well as in salon services. And there are times where I can also do in house services as well for those who are more comfortable in their home receiving these types of services. Okay, and of course, we have the Folly Grow Nourish products. I have the follicular fertilizer to soothe and to help stimulate the scalp. Other products are forthcoming. So be on the lookout for that. We will over at some point have a full-fledged line that will be catered to our hair loss clients that will help them in their journey to hair loss recovery. And if you have any questions or you need more help, please schedule your complimentary 15-minute consultation. And I say 15-minute, but if we go 30, it's fine. Because the bottom line is that I want to be able to hear you out. I want to hear what it is that your concerns are, and I want to be able to help. So, up to 30 minutes, we can have a conversation to see if we are a good fit and if we can. If I can help you or be of any help to you in any way. And if nothing else, you will walk away with some information, some great information that you can begin using today on your hair loss journey or the day of your consultation with your hair loss recovery journey. Above is my appointment link if you want to schedule the free consultation. You can also call me at 833-764 3634, or you can visit my website at www.medicalwigssolutionsllc.com. You can email me at angelaj at medicalwigssolutionsllc.com. So that's all for today. I hope that you all have thoroughly enjoyed this training as much as I've thoroughly enjoyed sharing. I always like to give information to my audience that could be beneficial to them and help them along their way to solve whatever issues and concerns that they have regarding anything beauty. And so until next time, you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. And until next time, you all be blessed. Bye.